How successful do you think the levy has been, and what do you think should be done to get more employer engagement and starts in apprenticeships?
Kirsty, perhaps I could start with you.
Wow, okay, it's a
big question.
Big question to start with, and probably I'm going to try not sit on the fence on this one, but it's difficult not to, because I think my immediate response to that is it is still too early to say. I think we just have to accept we're in this for the long haul, and therefore, although yes, we have got the statistics that talk to the year-on-year decline against the old frameworks versus the new standards, I think we are starting to see some green shoots starting around the new standards, the number of new standards that are available. Hopefully you're going to hear from this panel this evening, not least the employers represented on it, about some of the really good things that are coming out of the apprenticeship system right now. But it is clear that there are things that we still haven't got right, and there are clearly things that still need to happen. I mean, this constant sort of meddling and tinkering with policy and funding, yet at the same time, if we hadn't had the recent change that's just been announced around the fact that now apprentices don't have to be employed at the end of the apprenticeship, you might argue that's a good tinkering, as long as it doesn't mean that what this actually leads to is lots of apprentices on sort of second-rate work experience and don't get a really good apprenticeship programme. But I think what's really great about the opportunity we've got as a sector, as an ecosystem, is to put that quality into those apprenticeship programmes. So as long as we make sure that quality's there, as long as the quality's there in the on-programme and in the all-important EPA, the endpoint assessment that you will have heard Stewart and the panel were talking about earlier, then I think we've got to remain optimistic that whilst the system, we can't say the system is fully working right now, we just simply can't, we have to actually stick with it and make it work, because how else are we actually going to address the continuing looming skill shortages that we've got, not let alone with Brexit round the corner. So something had to change. We couldn't stay with what we had. That is a fact. Whether we've got it absolutely right, whether the government's got it right now, no. But I think we have to be optimistic about all the hard work and the momentum that has been created. Clearly, when you look at the stats around how much the levy is actually being used, there is still a long way to go. I mean, we've got things like 1.8 billion in the levy pot, and when I last looked, there was something like 110 million that had only been drawn down. I think that's going up. I think that's now finally going up. So as I say, I think we're starting to see those green shoots come through. But that would be my opening statement on that.
So general support for the concept of the levy, but clearly way to go. Kathryn, in terms of employers, what's your view of the levy? You're paying it, so...
Yeah, no, absolutely. So from our perspective, the levy and the reforms has been very positive. It has proved a catalyst to enable us to talk to our senior leaders about apprenticeships and really get the buy-in from the top down in order for us to deliver what we want to deliver. And indeed, we've seen a significant opportunity with a number of standards and the opportunity for us to diversify. So I think at the start of last year, we had about 10 different programs that we were offering across Lloyd's banking group. We've now got over 35 different programs. So there really is something for everyone across the whole group. So for us, it has been a positive thing.
Gordon, I know this was something that, in some respects, both parties had talked about in the past. What's your view of where we're up to?
Yes, well, I'll try and be as charitable as I can. You're absolutely right. We were supportive, and we are still supportive of the principle of the levy. But I have to say, it's had a pretty ropey existence so far. And I think, you know, I mean, I'm picking up on what Kirsty said. We are in for the long haul, and we need to look at the long haul. But, you know, when you introduce something like this, you've really got to get message and process and things as right as you possibly can first time round. And I think the government, frankly, were pretty abysmal in that respect. And that's why we are seeing the long drag that we are seeing with the statistics at the moment. And, you know, it comes back to the old question of what is the apprenticeship levy for? And there are lies, damn lies, and statistics, and there are also surveys. But the truth of the matter is that a number of these surveys are still showing that a significant number of employers, not necessarily the biggest employers, but certainly a lot of medium-sized employers and providers, and that still have grave doubts about the way in which this is working. Why have they got those doubts? basically because so much of it is being impacted by the slowness of movement from frameworks to standards, not helping at all. It's also about a certain amount of cynicism in some areas as to what this is. I've had over the last 12 months numbers of conversations with employers, and they're enormous, and people have said, yes, we're very committed to this, and other people have said, frankly, the way it's been handled, we just regard it as another payroll tax, and we're trying to get stuff out of it. Now, on the back of that, of course, we have the pretty grim starts statistics. Government has kept saying, well, you've got to expect this because people all piled in for apprenticeship applications before the levy came in, and this, that, and the other. But that tail, that drag tail, is going on too long, and so you're also getting people saying, well, we've got big companies. I mean, you mentioned Lloyd's. Lloyd's obviously, from what you've said, Kathryn, are doing well. And we can always, I think in this sector, as in other sectors, we can always point to individual companies who are doing well with a particular thing. The key issue is, how are we doing across the board? And across the board, we ain't doing too well. 2 or 3 positive things that I think we should say, and what we would say, and what we've tried to say to the government. First of all, the concept of overtraining apprenticeships, which is actually one that I spoke about 5 years ago at a Training 2000 event. I still believe that if there were financial and other incentives for larger employers to overtrain and place in the supply chain, that would soak up some of this money. I think the government's got to be much more imaginative about looking at the possibilities for devolved administrations to be able to make use of the levy, and obviously Sadiq Khan has been talking about that as well. And I think we also need to look at whether in fact it's reasonable, certainly in the short term, for people who are not being able to use, for whatever reason, their apprenticeship levy, to be able to use it for other forms of skills training. I wouldn't want to see that as a long-term thing, because I think it would undercut the principle of it. And the other point, of course, which we continue to make, is that in the context of the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education, as it is still, although it's not kicked in on the TE's technical education side, there is still a lack of resources to take this process forward.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think most people would agree with you that there's no doubt, whether we like it or not, the number of starts is low, and therefore that's, for every one of those is an apprentice who's not getting their training. So I think we'd all agree. Graham, any views on the system as a whole?
Well, I think just putting all the challenges of the implementation to one side, I think from a provider perspective, it has enabled us to have a new conversation with some of the bigger employers in our area. We're very much rooted to a single locality. So we have been able to have a conversation with some of our bigger employers that unfortunately wasn't there previously. So I think the levy has sparked maybe an interest, not necessarily always action, but I think it's sparked an interest that's enabled us just to have a dialogue about what they can do with their levy. And Gordon's absolutely right. Some of them are just saying, well, it's another tax and that's okay and we'll live with that. But actually others have been willing to engage in a dialogue, and we've managed to work with them to actually have some positive starts. I get a little bit annoyed about the volume issue. We may come on to that a bit later, but I want to see quality of starts, not quantity. And I'm quite pleased that I know it's convenient for the government to drop the 3 million target, but I think actually broadly I'm pleased about that, because I actually want quality placements for our young people and our adult retrainers, and I want apprenticeships to absolutely mean something that actually when you achieve it, actually it's worthwhile. So I take the point about, well, that's a number not getting in apprenticeships, but actually for me, in my region, I want them to be all of the highest quality.
I guess we'd all agree, and there is a bit of a dichotomy. It shouldn't be, because every single apprentice should be of the highest quality, and if the controls aren't there to make sure that's the case. And I accept the dichotomy of having a volume target. I'm not sure the government's dropped it yet.
I think they're conveniently just
changing the emphasis. But your first point, I think, again, is very important, that the levy does mean that there's a new set of people engaged. And In terms of degree apprenticeships, again, a new level of debate. Have you found that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's clearly a correlation between the introduction of the levy and the fact that in the 4 to 7 sector, we've seen a 24% increase. I'm in the area that actually has seen a rise. So you have to correlate those two things. And I think that's only a good thing to see more level 4+ opportunities. Personally, I think the levy still does have a lot of problems. And I think we can't deny the fact that we've only utilised it at around 8%. That's a huge, humongous chunk of money that we're looking at going back into the Treasury from next year that we should be utilising as businesses, as employers, and most importantly, for our students and apprentices. And I think as a sector, we really do need to galvanise to utilise that.
No, I agree. Right.
Yeah, I would echo what a number of people have said. It's been very slow to start, but momentum is absolutely building. So similarly to Alison, we will operate in a tech space where we've seen growth, quite significant growth in number of starts in the technical space. And the conversations that were alluded to earlier about this kind of, we're going to wipe it out, it's going to go, that was where we were with employers about 18 months, 2 years ago. When in fact, I remember going to an event with employers, our employers that we hosted, and there was that kind of attitude in the room, that there's real frustration from employers around what on earth am I going to spend this on? And it was a race to spend it. I want to spend it now. It wasn't necessarily about how was I going to use it to drive value. And it has taken a long time and a lot of hard work to take employers on that journey. And exactly to the point made earlier, the admin and the processes around that haven't helped. It's actually been, we've been fighting against that with employers and trying to help employers navigate their way through that. But we've done that. And so I think the second part of the question was around, well, what else can be done to encourage employers and starts? Stability. We spoke about it in the previous session, right? You've made all of these phenomenal changes. Some of them have, they've not quite worked yet, but we've had to go on a journey. And actually we can see the green shoots. We can see the signs that this is working. Broad brush change cannot be the answer.